we breathe in, we let the energy of the intention of this gathering sink down deep into our belly, into our pelvic bowl, into our sex organs, into the ground beneath us, the love, the connection, the exploration that we're about to take. And as we breathe out, we release anything that is blocking us from receiving the bountiful gifts and wisdom that is here for us in this book. We're breathing in, grounding ourselves in this moment, this beautiful, precious moment, here together, being with each other, loving each other, seeing each other, hearing each other. And as we breathe out love into this world. With every breath, we release the amplified love that's inside of us out into the world, touching every single person that is in need of it. For me specifically, I am sending that love to my Mesa office, to every single person in that office, to the walls in that office, the floors in that office, the desks, the chairs, every ounce of that office is being infused right now with love. And anybody who's aligned with that is going to leave. And anybody who is willing to be aligned with that, who is willing to be aligned with that, will stay and work with me and grow with me. If either of you have anybody you'd like to send love to, or like to infuse love into a situation, a person, an experience, a place, anything, feel free to share that now.
I'd like to send some love to Stacy, some healing energy this way.
Yes.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah. Oh, and we are here now.
Yes,
Yeah. All right. Go right ahead and do your thing. I'm here now. We're good.
Welcome to the club. All right. Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Sacred Wild, week 7 of The Alchemist. We're getting close to the end.
I know. I almost don't want to finish it this week. So that way we could just have an extended conversation next week.
Okay. I think I was looking, there's only like 20 pages of book left, but there's also there's an epilogue and then some other notes from the author and
About the author, yeah. Then why don't we look at finishing the book and then like the book part, and it looks like there's a preview of another book and about the author and things like that.
yeah.
Awesome.
We'll finish. We'll get to 168. We'll do the epilogue next week.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, I'll go first this time since you went first last time.
Sounds good.
Awesome sauce. Okay, we're picking up on page 143. The sun was setting when the boy's heart sounded a danger signal. They were surrounded by gigantic dunes, and the boy looked at the alchemist to see whether he had sensed anything, but he appeared to be unaware of any danger. 5 minutes later, the boy saw 2 horsemen waiting ahead of them. Before he could say anything to the alchemist, the 2 horsemen had become 10, and then 100, and then they were everywhere in the dunes. They were tribesmen dressed in blue with black rings around their turbans. Their faces were hidden behind blue veils with only their eyes showing. Even from a distance, their eyes conveyed the strength of their souls, and their eyes spoke of death. The 2 were taken to a nearby military camp. A soldier shoved the boy and the alchemist into a tent where the chief was holding a meeting with his staff. "These are the spies," said one of the men. "We're just travelers," the alchemist answered. "You were seen at the enemy camp 3 days ago, and you were talking with one of the other troops there." "I'm just a man who wanders the desert and knows the stars," said the alchemist. "I have no information about troops or about the movement of the tribes. I was simply acting as a guide for my friend here. Who is your friend? The chief asked. An alchemist, said the alchemist. He
Hmm.
understands the forces of nature, and he wants to show you his extraordinary powers. The boy listened quietly and fearfully. What is a foreigner doing here? Asked another of the men. He has brought money to give to your tribe, said the alchemist, before the boy could say a word. And seizing the boy's bag, the alchemist gave the gold coins to the chief. The Arab accepted them without a word. There was enough there to buy a lot of weapons. What is an alchemist? He asked finally. It's a man who understands nature and the world. If he wanted to, he could destroy this camp just with the force of the wind. The men laughed. They were used to the ravages of war and knew that the wind could not deliver them a fatal blow. Yet each felt his heart beat a bit faster. They were men of the desert, and they were fearful of sorcerers. I want to see him do it, said the chief. He needs 3 days, answered the alchemist. He's going to transform himself into the wind just to demonstrate his powers. If he can't do so, we humbly offer you our lives for the honor of your tribe. You can't offer me something that is already mine, the chief said arrogantly, but he granted the travelers 3 days. The boy was shaking with fear, but the alchemist helped him out of the tent. Don't let them see that you're afraid, the alchemist said. They are brave men, and they despise cowards. But the boy couldn't even speak. He was able to do so only after they had walked through the center of the camp. There was no need to imprison them. The Arabs simply confiscated their horses. So, once again, the world had demonstrated its many languages. The desert only moments ago had been endless and free, and now it was an impenetrable wall. You gave them everything I had, the boy said, everything I've saved in my entire life. Well, what good would it be to you if you had to die? The alchemist answered. Your money saved us for 3 days. It's not often that money saves a person's life. But the boy was too frightened to listen to words of wisdom. He had no idea how he was going to transform himself into the wind. He wasn't an alchemist. The alchemist asked one of the soldiers for some tea and poured some on the boy's wrists. A wave of relief washed over him, and the alchemist muttered some words that the boy didn't understand. Don't give in to your fears, said the alchemist in a strangely gentle voice. If you do, you won't be able to talk to your heart. But I have no idea how to turn myself into the wind. If a person is living out his personal legend, he knows everything he needs to know. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure.
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of failing. It's just that I don't know how to turn myself into the wind. Well, you'll have to learn. Your life depends on it. But what if I can't? Then you'll die in the midst of trying to realize your personal legend. That's a lot better than dying like millions of other people who never even knew that what their personal legend was. But don't worry, the alchemist continued. Usually the threat of death makes people a lot more aware of their lives. Their first day passed. There was a major battle nearby, and a number of wounded were brought back to the camp. The dead soldiers were replaced by others, and life went on. Death doesn't change anything, the boy thought. You could have died later on, a soldier said to the body of one of his companions. You could have died after peace had been declared, but in any case, you were going to die. At the end of the day, the boy went looking for the alchemist who had taken his falcon out into the desert. I still have no idea how to turn myself into the wind, the boy repeated. Remember what I told you. The world is only the visible aspect of God. And what alchemy does is to bring spiritual perfection into contact with the material plane. What are you doing? Feeding my falcon? If I'm not able to turn myself into the wind, we're going to die. Why feed your falcon? You're the one who may die. I already know how to turn myself into the wind. On the second day, the boy climbed to the top of a cliff near the camp. The sentinels allowed him to go. They had already heard about the sorcerer who could turn himself into the wind, and they didn't want to go near him. In any case, the desert was impassable. He spent the entire afternoon of the second day looking out over the desert and listening to his heart. The boy knew the desert sensed his fear. They both spoke the same language. I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. On the third day, the chief met with his officers. He called the alchemist to a meeting and said, "Let's see the boy who turns himself into the wind." "Let's," the alchemist answered. The boy took them to the cliff where he had been on the previous day. He told them all to be seated. "It's going to take a while," the boy said. "We're in no hurry," the chief answered. "We are men of the desert." The boy looked out at the horizon. There were mountains in the distance, and there were dunes, rocks, and plants that insisted on living where survival seemed impossible. There was the desert that held the wandered for so many months that he had wandered for so many months. Despite all that time, he knew only a small part of it. Within that small part, he found an Englishman, caravans, tribal wars, and an oasis with 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells. "What do you want here today?" the desert asked him. "Didn't you spend enough time looking at me yesterday?" "Somewhere you're holding the person I love," the boy said. "So when I look over your sands, I am also looking at her. I want to return to her, and I need your help so I can turn myself into the wind." "What is love?" the desert asked. "Love is the falcon's flight over your sands, because for him, you are a green field, from which he always returns with game. He knows your rocks, your dunes, and your mountains, and you are generous to him. The falcon's beak carries bits of me, myself," the desert said. "For years, I cared for his game, feeding it with little water that I have, with the little water I have, and then I show him where the game is. And one day, as I enjoy the fact that his game thrives on my surface, the falcon dives out of the sky and takes away what I have created." "But that's why you created the game in the first place," the boy answered, "to nourish the falcon, and the falcon then nourishes man. And eventually, man will nourish your sands, where the game will once again flourish. That's how the world goes." "So is that what love is?" "Yes, that's what love is. It's what makes the game become the falcon become man, and man, in his turn, the desert. It's what turns lead into gold and makes gold return to the earth." "I don't understand what you're talking about," the desert said, "but you can at least understand that somewhere in the sands there is a woman waiting for me, and that's why I have to turn myself into the wind." The desert didn't answer him for a few moments. Then it told him, "I'll give you my sands to help the wind to blow, but alone I can't do anything. You have to ask for help from the wind." The breeze began to blow. The tribesmen watched the boy from a distance, talking among themselves in a language that the boy couldn't understand. The alchemist smiled. The wind approached, and the boy touched his face. It knew of the boy's talk with the desert because the wind knows everything. They blow across the world without a birthplace and with no place to die. "Help me," the boy said. "One day you carried the voice of my loved one to me, who taught me to speak the language of the desert and the wind." "My heart," the boy answered. "The wind has many names. In that part of the world, it was called the Sirocco because it brought moisture from the ocean to the east. And in the distant lands the boy came from, they called it the Laventer because they believed it brought with it the sands of the desert and the screams of the Moorish wars. Perhaps in the places beyond the pastures where his sheep lived, men thought that the wind came from Andalusia, but actually, the wind came from no place at all, nor did it go any place at all. That's why it was stronger than the desert. Someone might one day plant trees in the desert and even raise sheep there, but never would they harness the wind. It can't, you can't be the wind said. We're two very different things. That's not true, the boy said. I learned the alchemist's secrets in my travels. I have inside me the winds, the desert, the oceans, and the stars, and everything created in the universe. We are all made of the same hand, and we all have the same soil. I want to be like you, able to reach every corner of the world, cross the seas, blow away the sands that cover my treasure, and carry the voice of the woman I love. I heard what you were talking about the other day with the alchemist, the wind said. He said everything has its own personal legend, but people can't turn themselves into the wind. Just teach me to be the wind for a few moments, the boy said, so I can talk about the limitlessness possibilities of people and the winds. The wind's curiosity was aroused, something that had never happened before. It wanted to talk about those things, but it didn't know how to turn a man into the wind. And look how many things the wind already knew how to do. It created deserts, sank ships, felled entire forests, and blew through cities filled with music and strange noises. It felt it had no limits. Yet, here was a boy saying that there were other things the wind should be able to do. This is what we call love, the boy said, seeing the wind was close to granting what he had requested. When you are loved, you can do anything in creation. When you are loved, there is no need at all to understand what's happening, because everything happens within you. And even men can turn themselves into the wind, as long as the wind helps, of course. The wind was a proud being, and it was becoming irritated with what the boy was saying. It commenced to blow harder, raising the desert sands, but finally it had to recognize that even making its way around the world, it didn't know how to turn a man into the wind, and it knew nothing about love. In my travels around the world, I have often seen people speaking of love and looking toward the heavens, the wind said, furious at having to acknowledge its own limitations. Maybe it's better to ask heaven. Well, then, help me do that, the boy said. Fill this place with a sandstorm so strong that it blots out the sun. Then I can look into the heavens without blinding myself. So the wind blew with all its strength, and the sky was filled with sand. The sun was turned into a golden disk. At the camp, it was difficult to see anything. The men of the desert were already familiar with that wind. They called it the simium. It was worse than a storm at sea. Their horses cried out, and all their weapons were filled with sand. On the heights, one of the commanders turned to the chief and said, maybe we had better end this. They could barely see the boy. Their faces were covered in blue cloths, and their eyes showed fear. Let's stop this, another commander said. I want to see the greatness of Allah, the chief said, with respect. I want to see how a man turns himself into the wind. But he made a mental note of the names of the two men who had expressed their fear. As soon as the wind stopped, he was going to remove them from their commands, because true men of the desert are not afraid. The wind told me that you know about love, the boy said to the sun. If you know about love, you must also know about the soul of the world, because it's made of love. From where I am, the sun said, I can see the soul of the world. It communicates with my soul, and together we cause plants to grow and the sheep to seek out shade. From where I am, and a long way from the earth, I learned how to love. I know that if I came even a little bit closer to the earth, everything there would die, and the soul of the world would no longer exist. So we contemplate each other, and we went and we want each other, and I give life and warmth. It gives me my reason for living. So you know about love, the boy said, and I know the soul of the world because I have talked in great lengths to each other during the endless trip through the universe. It tells me that its greatest problem is that up until now, only the minerals and the vegetables understand that all things are one. There's no need for iron to be the same as copper or copper to be the same as gold. Each performs its own exact function as a unique being. And everything would be a symphony of peace in the land if the hand that wrote all this had stopped on the fifth day of creation. But there was a sixth day, and the sun went on. You are wise because you observe everything from a distance, the boy said. But you don't know about love. If there hadn't been a sixth day, men would not exist. Copper would always be just copper, and lead just lead. It's true that everything has its personal legend, but one day that personal legend will be realized. So each thing has to transform itself into something better and to acquire a new personal legend until someday the soul of the world becomes the only thing. Soul of the world becomes one thing only. The sun thought about that and decided to shine more brightly. The wind, which was enjoying the conversation, started to blow with great force so that the sun would not blind the boy. This is why alchemy exists, the boy said, so that everyone will search for his treasure, find it, and then want to be better than he was in his former life. Lead will play its role until the world has no further need for lead, and then lead will have to turn itself into gold. That's what alchemists do. They show that when we strive to become better than we are, everything else around us becomes better too. Well, why did you say I don't know about love? The son asked the boy. Because it's not love to be static like the desert, nor is it love to roam the world like the wind. And it's not love to see everything from a distance, like you do. Love is the force that transforms and improves the soul of the world. When I first reached through to it, I thought the soul of the world was perfect. But later, I could see that it was like other aspects of creation. It has its own passions and wars. It is we who nourish the soul of the world, and the world we live in will be either better or worse, depending on whether we become better or worse. And that's where the power of love comes in. Because when we love, we always strive to become better than we are. So, what do you want of me? The son asked. I want you to help me turn myself into the wind, the boy answered. Nature knows me as the wisest being in creation, the son said, but I don't know how to turn you into the wind. Then, whom should I ask? The son thought for a minute. The wind was listening closely and wanted to tell every corner of the world that the sun's wisdom has its limitations, that it was unable to deal with the boy who spoke the language of the world. Speak to the hand that wrote all, said the sun. The wind screamed with delight and blew harder than ever. The tents were being blown from their ties to the earth, and the animals were being freed from their tethers. On the cliff, the men clutched at the earth at each other as they sought to keep from being blown away. The boy turned to the hand that wrote all. As he did so, he sensed the universe had fallen silent, and he decided not to speak. A current of love rushed from his heart, and the boy began to pray. It was a prayer that he had never said before, because it was a prayer without words or pleas. His prayer didn't give thanks for his sheep having found new pastures. It didn't ask that the boy be able to sell more crystal. It didn't beseech that woman he had met to continue to await his return. In the silence, the boy understood that the desert, the wind, and the sun were trying to understand the signs written by the hand and were seeking to follow their path and to understand what had been written on the single envelope. He saw that the omens were scattered throughout the earth and in space, and that there was no reason or significance attached to their appearance. He could see that not the deserts, nor the winds, nor the sun, nor the people knew what they had been created, why they had been created, but that the hand had a reason for all of this, and that only the hand could perform miracles, or transform the sea into desert, or a man into the wind, because only the hand understood that it was a larger design that had moved the universe to a point at which 6 days of creation had evolved into a masterwork. The boy reached through to the soul of the world and saw that it was a part of the soul of God, and he saw the soul of God was his own soul, and that he, a boy, could perform miracles. And I will pass.
Awesome. Is it passing to me?
Yeah. You don't want to read? Yeah.
Okay. The simum blew that day as it had never blown before. For generations thereafter, the Arabs recounted the legend of a boy who had turned himself into the wind, almost destroying a military camp in defiance of the most powerful chief in the desert. When the simum ceased to blow, everyone looked to the place where the boy had been, but he was no longer there. He was standing next to a sand-covered sentinel on the far side of the camp. The men were terrified at his sorcery, but there were two people who were smiling: the alchemist, because he had found his perfect disciple, and the chief, because the disciple had understood the glory of God. The following day, the general bade the boy and the alchemist farewell and provided them with an escort party to accompany them as far as they chose. They rode for the entire day. Toward the end of the afternoon, they came upon a Coptic monastery. The alchemist dismounted and told the escorts that they could return to camp. From here on, you will be alone, the alchemist said. You are only 3 hours from the pyramids. Thank you, said the boy. You taught me the language of the world. I only invoke what you already knew. The alchemist knocked on the gate of the monastery. A monk dressed in black came to the gate. They spoke for a few minutes in the Coptic tongue, and the alchemist bade the boy enter. I asked him to let me use the kitchen for a while. The alchemist smiled. They went to the kitchen at the back of the monastery. The alchemist lighted the fire, and the monk brought him some lead, which the alchemist placed in an iron pan. When the lead had become liquid, the alchemist took from his pouch the strange yellow egg. He scraped from it a sliver as thin as a hair, wrapped it in wax, and added it to the pan in which the lead had melted. The mixture took on a reddish color, almost the color of blood. The alchemist removed the pan from the fire and set it aside to cool. As he did so, he talked with the monk about the tribal wars. I think they're going to last for a long time, he said to the monk. The monk was irritated. The caravans had been stopped at Giza for some time, waiting for the wars to end, but God's will be done, the monk said. Exactly, answered the alchemist. When the pan had cooled, the monk and the boy looked at it dazzled. The lead had dried into the shape of the pan, but it was no longer lead. It was gold. Will I learn to do that someday? This was my personal legend, not yours, the alchemist answered. But I wanted to show you that it was possible. They returned to the gates of the monastery. There, the alchemist separated the disc into 4 parts. This is for you, he said, holding one of the parts out to the monk. It's for your generosity to the pilgrims. But this payment goes well beyond my generosity, the monk responded. Don't say that again. Life might be listening and give you less next time. The alchemist turned to the boy. This is for you to make up for what you gave to the general. The boy was about to say that it was much more than he had given the general, but he kept quiet because he had heard what the alchemist said to the monk. And this is for me, said the alchemist, keeping one of the parts. But I have to return to the desert where there are tribal wars. He took the 4th part and handed it to the monk. This is for the boy if he ever needs it. But I'm going in search of my treasure, the boy said. I'm very close to it now. And I'm certain you'll find it, the alchemist said. Then why this? Because you have already lost your savings twice, once to the thief and once to the general. I'm an old superstitious Arab and I believe in our proverbs. There's one that says everything that happens once can never happen again, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a third. They mounted their horses. I want to tell you a story about dreams, said the alchemist. The boy brought his horse closer. In ancient Rome, at the time of Emperor Tiberius, there lived a good man who had 2 sons. One was in the military and had been sent to the most distant regions of the empire. The other son was a poet and delighted all of Rome with his beautiful verses. One night, the father had a dream. An angel appeared to him and told him that the words of one of his sons would be learned and repeated throughout the world for the generations to come. The father woke from his dream grateful and crying because life was generous and had revealed to him something any father would be proud of. Shortly thereafter, the father died as he tried to save a child who was about to be crushed by the wheels of a chariot. Since he had lived his entire life in a manner that was correct and fair, he went directly to heaven, where he met the angel that had appeared to his dream. You are always a good man, the angel said to him. You lived your life in a loving way and died with dignity. I can now grant you any wish you desire. Life was good to me, the man said. When you appeared in my dream, I felt that all my efforts had been rewarded because my son's poems will be read by men for generations to come. I don't want anything for myself, but any father would be proud of the fame achieved by one whom he had cared for as a child and educated as he grew up. Sometimes in the distant future, I would like to see my son's words. The angel touched the man's shoulder, and they were both projected far into the future. They were in an immense setting, surrounded by thousands of people, speaking a strange language. The man wept with happiness. I knew that my son's poems were immortal, he said to the angel through his tears. Can you please tell me which of my son's poems these people are repeating? The angel came closer to the man and, with tenderness, led him to a bench nearby where they sat down. The verses of your son, who was the poet, were very popular in Rome, the angel said. Everyone loved them and enjoyed them. But when the reign of Tiberius ended, his poems were forgotten. The words you're hearing now are those of your son in the military. The man looked at the angel in surprise. Your son went to serve at a distant place and became a centurion. He was just and good. One afternoon, one of his servants fell ill, and it appeared that he would die. Your son had heard of a rabbi who was able to cure illnesses, and he rode out for days and days in search of this man. Along the way, he learned that the man he was seeking was the Son of God. He met others who had been cured by him, and they instructed your son in the man's teachings. And so, despite the fact that he was a Roman centurion, he converted to their faith. Shortly thereafter, he reached the place where the man he was looking for was visiting. He told the man that one of his servants was gravely ill, and the rabbi made ready to go to his house with him. But the centurion was a man of faith, and looking into the eyes of the rabbi, he knew that he was surely in the presence of the Son of God. And this is what your son said, the angel told the man. These are the words he said to the rabbi at that point, and they have never been forgotten. My Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word and my servant will be healed. The alchemist said, no matter what he does, every person on earth plays a central role in the history of the world, and normally he doesn't know it. The boy smiled. He had never imagined that questions about life would be of such importance to a shepherd. Goodbye, the alchemist said. Goodbye, said the boy. The boy rode along through the desert for several hours, listening avidly to what his heart had to say. It was his heart that would tell him where his treasure was hidden. Where your treasure is, there also will be your heart, the alchemist had told him. But his heart was speaking of other things. With pride, it told the story of a shepherd who had left his flock to follow a dream he had on 2 different occasions. It told of personal legends and of the many men who had wandered in search of distant lands or beautiful women, confronting the people of their times and their preconceived notions. It spoke of journeys, discoveries, books, and change. As he was about to climb yet another dune, his heart whispered, be aware of the place where you are brought to tears. That's where I am, and that's where your treasure is. The boy climbed the dune slowly. A full moon rose again in the starry sky. It had been a month since he had set forth from the oasis. The moonlight cast shadows through the dunes, creating the appearance of a rolling sea. It reminded the boy of the day when the horse had reared in the desert, and he had come to know the alchemist. And the moon fell on the desert's silence, and on a man's journey in search of his treasure. When he reached the top of the dune, his heart leapt. There, illuminated by the light of the moon and the brightness of the desert, stood the solemn and majestic pyramids of Egypt. The boy fell to his knees and wept. He thanked God for making him believe in his personal legend and for leading him to meet a king, a merchant, an Englishman, and an alchemist. And above all, for his having met a woman of the desert who had told him that love would never keep a man from his personal legend. If he wanted to, he could now return to the oasis, go back to Fatima, and live his life as a simple shepherd. After all, the alchemist continued to live in the desert, even though he understood the language of the world and knew how to transform lead into gold. He didn't need to demonstrate his science and art to everyone. The boy told himself that, on the way toward realizing his own personal legend, he had learned all he needed to know and had experienced everything he might have dreamed of. But here he was, at the point of finding his treasure, and he reminded himself that no project is completed until its objective has been achieved. The boy looked at the sand around him and saw that, where his tears had fallen, a scarab beetle was scuttling through the sand. During his time in the desert, he had learned that, in Egypt, the scarab beetles are a symbol of God. Another omen, the boy began to dig into the dune. As he did so, he thought of what the crystal merchant had once said, that anyone could build a pyramid in his backyard. The boy could see now that he couldn't do so if he placed stone upon stone for the rest of his life. Throughout the night, the boy dug at the place he had chosen, but found nothing. He felt weighted down by the centuries of time since the pyramids had been built. But he didn't stop. He struggled to continue digging as he fought the wind, which often blew the sand back into the excavation. His hands were abraded and exhausted, but he listened to his heart. It had told him to dig where his tears fell. As he was attempting to pull out the rocks he encountered, he heard footsteps. Several figures approached him. Their backs were to the moonlight, and the boy could see neither their eyes nor their face. What are you doing here? One of the figures demanded. Because he was terrified, the boy didn't answer. He had found where his treasure was and was frightened of what might happen. We're refugees from the tribal wars and we need money, the other figure said. What are you hiding there? I'm not hiding anything, the boy answered. But one of them seized the boy and yanked him back out of the hole. Another, who was searching the boy's bag, found the piece of gold. There's gold here, he said. The moon shone on the face of the Arab who had seized him, and the man's eyes, and in the man's eyes, the boy saw death. He's probably got more gold hidden in the ground. They made the boy continue digging, but he found nothing. As the sun rose, the men began to beat the boy. He was bruised and bleeding. His clothing was torn to shreds, and he felt the death was near. What good is money to you if you're going to die? It's not often that money can save someone's life, the alchemist had said. Finally, the boy screamed at the men, I'm digging for treasure. And although his mouth was bleeding and swollen, he told his attackers that he had twice dreamed of a treasure hidden near the pyramids of Egypt. The man who appeared to be the leader of the group spoke to one of the others. Leave him. He doesn't have anything. He must have stolen this gold. The boy fell to the sand, nearly unconscious. The leader shook him and said, We're leaving. But before they left, he came back to the boy and said, You're not going to die. You'll live. You'll learn that a man shouldn't be so stupid. 2 years ago, right here on this spot, I had a recurrent dream too. I dreamed that I should travel to the fields of Spain and look for a ruined church where shepherds and their sheep slept. In my dream, there was a sycamore growing out of the ruins of the sacristy. And I was told that if I dug at the roots of the sycamore, I would find a hidden treasure. But I'm not so stupid to cross an entire desert just because of a recurrent dream. And they disappeared. The boy stood up shakily and looked once more at the pyramids. They seemed to laugh at him, and he laughed back, his heart bursting with joy, because now he knew where his treasure was.
Wow.
Right?
That was pretty intense. This is
Yeah.
yeah, that was super intense. That was there's a lot to unpack in that.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of nothing. Like it's all here.
Mm-hmm.
The whole book just points right back to my own soul. Like,
Mm-hmm. That's the piece. It
yeah,
keeps talking about the heart. Like he talks about calming himself so he can listen to his heart, letting the fear go so he can listen to his heart. And like it's been so funny. Like right now I'm like doing my job plus learning this other job. Plus now I'm going to be taking on 2 communities. And I was driving around today with Jean Marie, and I just have message after message after message, and then email after email, and callback after callback. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know how it's going to happen. And I get back, and I'm just doing my thing. And in 2 hours, I'm caught up. Phone calls, emails, everything. And I'm like, oh. And so now I'm working on other projects and doing the things. And it's like once and it was just that talk, like it'll all get done. Nothing will not get done. Like it will, you know?
as long as you
And
stay down.
it did.
Right.
And once I stopped the worrying about getting it done, I was able to be in the energetic space to actually get it done.
Right. Yep, we hold ourselves back, that's for sure. Until we
Absolutely.
don't. Until we don't. And that's the magic, let go and stop holding myself back. And yeah.
And it's all just beliefs and energy. I mean, It's all energy. That's it. Beliefs are energy. Thoughts are energy. Identities are energy. Words are energy.
Money.
Actions are energy. And going back to, quieting, calming, stepping back and observing, it allows us to begin to listen to our hearts, be able to listen and discern what is in alignment and what is not. And sometimes the distinctions are super subtle. Sometimes love can feel like fear, and fear can feel like love. And being able to step back and discern between the two and really truly listen at the subtleties, right? Listening to the winds, listening to watching the hawks, listening and watching and feeling and receiving the omens that are all here, right? Letting go of the fact that we have to do anything or we have to know anything. And that space where, the alchemist was like, I didn't teach you anything. I just opened it up. I opened up what you already have in yourself. And that's, yeah, like, and that's that point of being, and it's so funny because like I went from using the word triggered to using the word activated, and now I'm using the word ignited. Like, I love the word ignited because even activated, like, that's the beauty of igniting people, right? Like, let's light the fire on that crunchiness.
Right.
Let's live big and bold and all the things. Let's go on a fucking podcast and talk about BDSM and getting spanked and fucking doing mushrooms and ayahuasca and doing all the fucking things. Yeah, let's ignite the fuck out of people and give them the opportunity to look at the crunchiness, right? Because what that does is the crunchiness is what's blocking the internal wisdom. So yeah, again, let's let that shit go. Let's break it up. Let's open it. And so that way we can access and hear our wisdom.
Yeah, it's crazy. This like this whole thing with my roommate, just the way I've been hearing it forever that my soul's been saying I need to get out. I need to get out. I need to stop blocking him from his crunchiness, and I was calling it love. No, I need to be here. He needs me here. And finally I heard it, and it was at that perfect moment where everything was aligned. And next thing you know, I've got my own place. I got my new van. I've got this. I mean, there's no question that what it unfolded exactly how it was supposed to, which would have happened a year
At
ago.
any point. Yeah.
When my soul started this crushing moment, and I knew that the end was inevitable. I just kept holding on and holding on, and fuck.
And the beautiful thing though is that like the soul of the universe never gives up on us.
No.
It'll just continue to tell us in different ways. And it finally found a way to speak to you in which you could hear it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Sometimes it has to get louder. Sometimes it has to get more expansive. Sometimes it has to get deeper. Sometimes it has to get in your body. Sometimes it has to whatever. But the universe will always guide you and it never, ever, ever, ever gives up on you. No matter how much we ignore it, deny it, refuse it, resist it, convolute it, misunderstand it, misinterpret it, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's funny. She just said one of the quotes from earlier: the universe is always conspiring in your favor. She's
yes.
Like, yes, it is.
Yep. And it's our job to receive it.
Right.
That's it.
Stop blocking it.
Show me how easy it is, God. Show me how good it can get.
No, I want to keep my eyes closed.
Well, it can be, but for real though, because it can be fucking scary. I was just talking about this. I don't even remember who, because it's a constant conversation, but like, because when we open our fucking eyes, we also open our eyes to the fact that we had been, you know, following and allowing people to tell us how to live and dictate our lives that did not have our best interest at stake, you know? And so, like, it can be fucking scary. And then it can be scary to like walk out into the world with like, look, mom, no fucking training wheels, no
Right.
hands. The fuck am I doing? Right? But really, it's all just about practice, you know, and remembering that we got to the point to where we are without the awareness that we have now. And the awareness is a resource, it's a tool, you know, and this is just all the shit that I keep telling myself over the past week with all the new stuff that's happening. It's like, no, Jen, like, don't, like, it's so easy for me to fall into the trying
Right.
trying to be what I think they want, when the truth is like, no, it's about me being here. Like, that's the beauty of where I'm at, is that I just show up as myself no matter where I go.
Mhm.
And this is where I am.
That's magical. I very clearly remember that shift in my perspective. Like, no, I'm done being this for that, this, that, and I'm just me, and everything works much easier. There is no more
Remember
trying.
when we first started working together?
Yeah. Ah,
One foot in AA, one foot out of AA,
right.
and this over here, and
Right.
AA over here.
Yeah. I
I
wasn't
was
being
like, how
authentic.
is that working out
It
for
doesn't
you,
work.
bro? That's gotta be hard. How
Yeah.
does that feel in your soul?
Mm-mm. I gotta be me through and through, and then life just gets so
Well,
much more simple.
Simple.
yeah, because
Yeah.
like, you're being you.
As you just exactly.
Yeah.
It's so much more difficult to have to learn to play. You're playing roles
Right.
eventually if you're not showing up as yourself, and that takes so much more work and energy and intention to play your role over
In
here and
whatever
to play your
game.
role over
Yeah.
here and play your role over here, than to just be like, I ain't got no fucking roles. This is
No,
me.
this is me.
Well, and then
Authentic.
the universe is giving you what the role you're playing, what matches the role you're playing, not what matches you, not what aligns for you, not what is for you, but what aligns for the role that you're playing.
Right.
Because even though it's a role and it's not the true core, it's still energy being expelled, it's being put out into the universe, and the universe is going to match that. And so not only are you using so much fucking energy to be this person that you're not, to conform and to twist and to contort your energy into being something that you're not, but then you're just constantly confronted with things that don't align with you. Right? It aligns with the version of you that you're pretending to be, that you're acting like, that you're performing.
Yeah. Too much
And
work.
so you're putting forth all of this energy to get what you don't want.
Yeah. And then
When
I'm
if
getting
we
shit that I don't need, and then because it's not useful when I'm my authentic self. You know what I mean? It's
and
only
then
for that role, and then
right, and then on top of that, like, your energy is going, you're clutching, you're shifting, you're transforming, and so then you're not even in a receptive space.
Authentic, intentional energy. It's like
wasted energy. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you have to play a role, like that's just wasted.